The luxurious ballroom shimmered with gold and crystal, filled with the hum of conversations and clinking glasses. A wedding celebration was underway, one that was supposed to be a grand affair. For the millionaire, Alexander Cole, it was a chance to finally settle down, but there was one thing he didn't know: his bride wasn't the woman he thought she was. "Isn't she just perfect for you?" his friend Mark whispered, nodding toward the stunning figure walking down the aisle. Alexander's gaze followed the woman, but it wasn't admiration that painted his face. It was a feeling of sheer triumph. He had won this bet. He had married the rebellious woman, Lily Hart, who had a reputation for being difficult, independent, and impossible to tame. She was the daughter of a wealthy family, but she wanted no part of the high society life her parents had planned for her. To him, she was just another pawn in his game. He didn't care about love. He had made this marriage a challenge, a gamble on who could win. The bet had been simple: convince Lily Hart to marry him, and if he succeeded, he would win a fortune. But he wasn't prepared for what would happen next. As they stood face to face, exchanging vows, Lily's hands shook. She refused to meet his gaze. Alexander had seen this kind of coldness before. He thought she was just playing hard to get, as she always did. After all, she had been impossible to impress with his money, his status, his power. This was going to be a win, a piece of conquest to add to his list. Then came the moment when the priest asked, "Do you, Alexander, take Lily to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," he replied, not thinking twice. "Do you, Lily, take Alexander to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Lily hesitated, her lips trembling. Her eyes flickered, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "I do," she whispered, barely audible. The crowd erupted into applause, and as they kissed to seal the union, Alexander felt victorious. But something was amiss. The weight of her hesitation lingered in the air, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Later that night, after the guests had departed, Alexander escorted his new bride to their private suite in the mansion. She walked beside him, her head low. He didn't mind. As far as he was concerned, this was a victory, and soon, she would be his, completely. He turned to her, his smile wide. "So, Lily, tell me. How does it feel to lose the bet? I hope you're ready to play by my rules now." She didn't respond. Instead, she walked toward the bed, sitting on the edge. Alexander's smile faltered. Was she still angry? She had been difficult from the beginning, but this was different. There was something in her silence. "Come on, Lily. We're married now. Don't tell me you're going to keep up this act all night." His voice dropped, a little more forceful now. "We'll make this work, just like you promised." She met his gaze, her eyes hardening. "You think this is a game, don't you?" Her voice was steady, but there was an underlying edge to it. "Well, I'm about to show you something that will change everything." She stood up, removing her veil and the layers of her wedding dress. She walked to the bathroom without a word, leaving him to wonder what she was up to. He frowned, but tried to shake off the unease that crept into his mind. Minutes passed, and just as Alexander was about to dismiss the weird feeling building inside him, she reappeared. His heart skipped a beat. She was standing in front of him, no longer wearing the dress. But it wasn't her body that made his breath catch, it was the look on her face. She was nervous, almost vulnerable. "Lily?" He spoke her name in confusion, his voice laced with uncertainty. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Something important. Something I should have told you a long time ago." He walked toward her, confused but intrigued. "What are you talking about?" With a deep breath, she said, "I'm a virgin." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He stared at her, unable to comprehend what she had just said. His mind raced. This couldn't be true. She had agreed to marry him, played along with his game. But the look in her eyes, the sincerity, told him that it was, suddenly, everything changed. The bet, the victory, the arrogance, none of it mattered anymore. Alexander's mind went into overdrive, unable to process the shift. He had never expected this. Lily took a step back, as if sensing his growing shock. She didn't wait for his reaction. "I'm not the woman you think I am, Alexander. This marriage, it's not what you think it is." His heart raced, his pulse pounding in his ears. He had played a game for so long that he hadn't considered the consequences. Now, the woman standing in front of him, the woman he had bet on, was revealing something that shook him to his core. Alexander was frozen, his mind scrambling to make sense of what Lily had just told him. The words, "I'm a virgin," echoed in his head like a constant drumbeat. He blinked, still standing a few feet away from her, struggling to swallow the confusion that churned inside him. Lily shifted uncomfortably on the bed, her eyes avoiding his. Alexander's gaze dropped to the floor as he tried to process her words. This wasn't part of the plan. Nothing about this was supposed to happen. She was supposed to be his trophy wife, a woman who would fit perfectly into the perfect life he had built for himself. But now, she had shattered that image with a simple confession. "What does this mean?" he asked, his voice tight, more composed than he felt. "I don't understand. You agreed to marry me, why not tell me this before?" Lily hesitated, biting her lip. "I didn't know how to. I didn't want to be treated differently. And I didn't want you to think that I was lying to you from the start." Her words barely registered. He felt his heart race. Was she telling the truth? Had she kept this secret from him, knowing what kind of man he was? Did she think he would view her differently now? Would this revelation change everything between them? "I don't understand. Why keep this a secret? I mean, this wasn't a normal marriage, Lily. It was part of a deal," he said, frustration creeping into his tone. "This was about more than just us. You knew what you were getting into when you agreed to this." Lily flinched, but she held her ground. "I know it was a deal to you, but not to me. I never wanted this bet. I didn't want to marry you like this. I never asked for any of it." The truth stung like a slap to the face. Alexander stared at her, completely caught off guard. He had underestimated Lily. He thought he had her figured out, thought he knew she was just like the other women who were after his wealth and prestige. But now, standing here, seeing the pain in her eyes, he realized how wrong he was. "I didn't want to be used as a pawn, Alexander. My father forced me into this marriage. I thought maybe you could look past the deal and see me for who I am." Her voice faltered, and she looked away, ashamed. For the first time since their wedding began, Alexander felt a twinge of guilt, a pang he couldn't ignore. He had never seen Lily as anything but a challenge. His arrogance had led him to believe that she was just another prize, another possession to add to his collection. But now, hearing her confess her pain, he realized how shallow he had been. "Your father?" Alexander repeated, almost incredulous. "He forced you into this," Lily nodded. "He made the arrangement with your family. He didn't give me a choice." Alexander sat down next to her on the bed, the weight of the conversation slowly sinking in. He had always thought he had the upper hand, always thought he controlled the situation. But now, for the first time, he understood the power dynamics at play. He was part of a game much bigger than his own ego. "You're telling me," he said slowly, still trying to make sense of everything, "that your father was behind all of this, that this marriage was his idea?" "Yes," Lily whispered. "I never wanted to be anyone's trophy, Alexander. I never wanted to marry you for your money, and I certainly didn't want to be part of your stupid bet." The words stung, but they made sense. Alexander had been too blinded by his own pride to see how deeply entangled Lily was in a world of control and manipulation. He had reduced her to a mere prize, without ever considering her feelings, but the reality was too harsh. He wasn't sure how to proceed. He had made her his wife under false pretenses, and now, he wasn't even sure if he knew who she truly was. Then why didn't you just tell me this from the start? He asked, his voice softening. Why marry me if you knew you didn't want this? Lily's eyes welled up, her voice trembling. Because I didn't have a choice. And because, somewhere inside, I thought maybe I could change things. I thought, maybe you could love me. The words hit him harder than he expected. Lily, this fiery woman he had underestimated, had hoped for something more than what he had offered. The thought of her feeling trapped, feeling helpless, made him feel sick. Before he could respond, Lily stood up abruptly, wiping her eyes. I don't want this life anymore. I don't want to be married to someone who doesn't care about me. I've been used enough. She turned toward the door, but Alexander stood up and grabbed her arm gently. Wait. She looked at him, her expression defiant, but there was something else in her eyes, something that still hoped, still believed that there could be something real between them. I know I've messed this up, Lily, he said, his voice low, almost regretful. I never meant for this to go so far. But you have to understand. I never expected any of this. I never thought it would go this way. She looked at him, studying his face, searching for sincerity. For a moment, there was silence between them, the weight of everything they hadn't said hanging in the air. Finally, Lily spoke again, her voice quieter but still firm. It's too late, Alexander. The damage is done. Without another word, she walked out of the room, leaving him standing there, her final words echoing in his mind. As the days passed, Alexander found himself haunted by Lily's words. The once confident man, who had always felt in control, now felt lost. He had spent his entire life building an empire, securing his wealth and influence, but it was all meaningless now. The woman he had married, who he had treated as nothing more than a game, had shown him a side of himself he hadn't even realized existed. He couldn't stop thinking about her, about the vulnerability she had shown, the way she had shared her deepest fears and desires with him. He had seen Lily as a conquest, but now he saw her as a person, someone with dreams, hopes, and a past that had shaped her into who she was. But how could he fix what he had broken? One evening, while he was sitting alone in his office, his phone buzzed with a message from Lily. His heart skipped a beat. Was she finally ready to talk? He opened the message, but it wasn't from Lily. It was from a number he didn't recognize. You don't know everything about Lily, Alexander. There's more to her story than you think. She's not the woman you believe her to be. The message was followed by an attachment, an old photograph of Lily with someone he didn't recognize. The photo was dated from several years ago, and Lily was standing beside a man with dark eyes and a serious expression. They looked close, too close for comfort. Alexander stared at the photo, a cold chill running down his spine. What was this? Who was this man? He quickly typed a reply. Who is this? What do you know about Lily? The response was swift. You'll find out soon enough. The truth about Lily is darker than you think. The days after receiving that cryptic message felt like an eternity for Alexander. He couldn't stop thinking about it. The photo, the cryptic text, it all felt like a warning. Who was this man in the picture with Lily? What was it that he didn't know about her? The more he thought about it, the more desperate he became to uncover the truth. His mind raced with possibilities, but every theory seemed to only lead to more questions. He tried to get in touch with Lily, but she was avoiding him. Her phone would go straight to voicemail, and she didn't respond to any of his messages. The distance between them had grown into an impenetrable wall, and it frustrated him. He was used to controlling everything in his life, but Lily had always been different. She had a way of slipping through his fingers, of evading the tight grip he tried to keep on her. One evening, Alexander decided to take matters into his own hands. He couldn't keep waiting for Lily to come to him. He had to find the answers, even if it meant going behind her back. He hired a private investigator. The investigator was discreet and quick, but as the days went by, Alexander's impatience grew. He found himself pacing the room, glancing at his phone every few minutes, waiting for the call that would finally tell him what he needed to know. Then, late one night, the phone rang. Mr. Winters, the investigator's voice crackled on the other end. "I've got the information you asked for." "Tell me," Alexander demanded, his pulse quickening. "The man in the photo, his name is Ethan Carver. He's someone from Lily's past." "They were close," the investigator said. "Very close. It seems they were involved in something a lot more serious than just a casual relationship. There's talk of business dealings, something shady. I haven't uncovered all the details yet, but I've found a lead." "A lead?" Alexander repeated, his voice tight. "What kind of lead?" "There's an address," the investigator said. "A place where they met regularly, back when Lily was much younger. It's a warehouse on the outskirts of town. I've got the address, if you want to follow up." A wave of anger surged through Alexander's chest. He couldn't believe it. Lily had been hiding this secret from him the entire time. But why? Why keep something like this hidden? "Get me all the details," he said, his voice colder now. "I'll take it from here." The investigator agreed, and the call ended. The next morning, Alexander stood in front of the warehouse, his hands clenched into fists. The place was tucked away at the edge of town, isolated and quiet, as if it had been forgotten by time. The warehouse was old, weathered, with a faded sign hanging on the front, barely legible. It felt wrong, like stepping into a different world altogether. He hesitated for a moment, then pushed open the creaking door. Inside, the space was empty except for dust-covered crates and rusted machinery. The silence was deafening, broken only by the echo of his footsteps as he walked deeper into the building. Suddenly, he heard a sound, a soft rustling, as if someone was moving behind the crates. Alexander froze, his heart racing. He wasn't alone. He crept forward cautiously, his breath shallow, every sense heightened. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a figure step out from the shadows. It was Ethan, the man from the photo. Ethan was tall, with dark, sharp features that looked almost too perfect to be real. He wasn't surprised to see Alexander. In fact, he seemed to be expecting him. Well, Ethan said with a cold smile. "I wondered how long it would take for you to come looking." Alexander's anger flared. "What do you know about Lily? What's your connection to her?" Ethan stepped closer, his eyes glinting with something dark and calculating. "Lily and I go way back. She's more than just a pretty face, you know. You think you know her, but you don't. You never will." "Enough with the games," Alexander snapped. "Tell me the truth. What is she hiding from me?" Ethan chuckled softly, as if enjoying the tension in the air. "It's not just Lily who's hiding things, is it? You've got your own secrets, don't you, Alexander?" The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Alexander clenched his jaw, refusing to let his frustration show. "What do you want from me?" Ethan's smile faded, replaced by something more sinister. "Nothing from you. But I think you should know that your perfect little wife isn't who you think she is. She's been involved in some very dangerous things, things you wouldn't understand. But if you really want to know what's going on, you'll have to dig deeper. Much deeper." Without another word, Ethan turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Alexander standing there, reeling from the revelation. As Alexander drove back home, his mind whirred with the information he had just learned. Ethan had made it clear that there were parts of Lily's life, parts of his own life, that he didn't know about. And it unsettled him. How much had she been hiding? And why? His thoughts turned to their marriage, to the bet that had started everything. Had he truly understood who Lily was when he married her? Or had he simply been blinded by his own arrogance, thinking he could control everything around him? When he got back to the mansion, the atmosphere was tense. The servants avoided his gaze, and the air felt thick with unspoken words. He walked upstairs, to their bedroom, hoping to find Lily there so they could talk. But the room was empty. The bed was unmade, and Lily's things were gone. His heart sank. She had left. Frantically, he searched the house for any sign of her, but it was clear. She was gone. The woman he had married, the woman he had thought he could control, had slipped away without a trace. Desperation set in. He couldn't lose her. Not like this. There had to be something he could do. Weeks passed without a word from Lily. Alexander was a man on the edge, consumed by regret and guilt. The business world, his empire, nothing seemed to matter anymore. His mind was fixated on Lily, and the more he thought about it, the more the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. One evening, he received another message from the same anonymous number that had sent him the first one. Lily isn't the only one hiding secrets, Alexander. Maybe it's time you learned about your own past. The message was followed by an attachment, a video. Hesitant, but with no other choice, Alexander opened it. His eyes widened as he watched the footage. It was a recording of a young Alexander, taken years ago, before he became the man he was today. In the video, he was speaking to a man he didn't recognize, but the conversation was unmistakable. The man was blackmailing him, threatening to expose something from his past that could destroy him. Alexander's heart raced as the realization hit him like a freight train. His own dark past was about to come to light. The weight of the video still hung heavy over Alexander's mind. He spent sleepless nights replaying the scene over and over again, unable to shake the image of his younger self, so naive and trapped in a situation he never thought would come to light. The blackmailer's threats had been clear. If Alexander didn't comply with his demands, everything would be exposed, and the scandal would ruin him. Alexander knew that keeping his secrets hidden had always been a dangerous game, but he never imagined it would come back to haunt him so soon. He had built his empire on trust and control, but now, everything was unraveling. How had the anonymous person found out about his past? How did they know so much? Determined to regain control, Alexander contacted his lawyer. His goal was simple: find out who was behind this blackmail and make sure they paid for it. But the lawyer's response was less reassuring than he had hoped. "I've traced the phone number you gave me," his lawyer said grimly. "But the trail is cold. This person is covering their tracks well. We might need to dig deeper." "Do it," Alexander ordered, his voice cold and determined. "I want them found. No matter the cost." As the investigation continued, Alexander became more restless. The tension between him and Lily grew, and despite his efforts to reach out, she remained unreachable. He couldn't understand why she had left without a word, why she was avoiding him. He was desperate for answers that seemed to slip further and further from his grasp. One night, when the mansion felt especially empty, Alexander sat in his office, staring at the documents spread across his desk. His thoughts were consumed by Lily. Where had she gone? What was she hiding? And most importantly, why had she left him? His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. He glanced at the screen and saw a message from an unknown number. It was a simple sentence, but it sent a chill down his spine. "Meet me at the old pier. I have the answers you seek." Without a second thought, Alexander grabbed his coat and left the mansion. His heart pounded in his chest as he drove through the dark streets, the glow of the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. He didn't know who had sent the message, but he had a feeling that the answers he was searching for would be waiting at the pier. The pier was desolate and eerie, with the wind howling through the creaking wooden planks. Alexander's footsteps echoed as he approached the end of the pier, where a lone figure stood facing the water. The figure turned as he approached, and Alexander's breath caught in his throat when he saw who it was: Lily. She was standing there, her hair tousled by the wind, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. She looked different, stronger, somehow, but also distant. She had changed in ways Alexander couldn't fully understand. "Lily," he began, his voice shaky. "Where have you been? I've been trying to find you. What is going on?" Lily didn't respond immediately. She took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the horizon. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. But there was an underlying tension. "I had to leave, Alexander," she said, her eyes finally meeting his. "I couldn't keep living a lie. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when I knew the truth was out there, waiting to destroy us." "The truth?" Alexander asked, his pulse quickening. "What truth?" Lily took a step closer to him, her eyes dark with emotion. "I've been hiding things from you, things you don't understand. And now, you're not the only one with secrets." "What do you mean?" Alexander's voice was low, barely a whisper, as if he feared the answer. Lily paused, as if weighing her words carefully. "I'm not just some innocent woman, Alexander. My past is just as complicated as yours. I've made mistakes. I've done things I regret, things that could ruin everything we've built together." Before Alexander could respond, Lily reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. She handed it to him without a word, and he took it, his hands trembling. "Open it," she said, her voice barely audible. "You need to know the truth. All of it." With a feeling of dread settling in his chest, Alexander tore open the envelope. Inside was a collection of photographs, pictures of Lily, but not the woman he had married. These photos were taken years ago, back when she had been involved with Ethan. There were images of them together in what appeared to be secret meetings, laughing together, holding hands, and even more intimate moments. There was no denying the connection between them, but what shocked Alexander even more were the final few photos in the envelope. They were not of Lily and Ethan, but of Lily with a man he recognized all too well. "The blackmailer, why didn't you tell me about this?" Alexander asked, his voice raw with emotion. "Why keep this from me?" Lily's face hardened, her eyes narrowing. "I was protecting you. I was protecting us. I didn't want you to know about the things I've done. About the people I've been involved with. And I didn't want you to know about Ethan, because he has his own secrets, ones that could ruin everything." "But why now?" Alexander demanded. "Why are you telling me all of this now?" Lily turned away from him, staring out at the water. "Because I'm not the only one being blackmailed. They know about us, Alexander. They know about the things we've both done. And they're going to use it against us, unless we do something about it." The world around Alexander seemed to fall apart as Lily's words echoed in his mind. Blackmail. Secrets. Lies. They had both been living in a carefully constructed facade, but the walls were crumbling. And there was nowhere left to hide. As the wind howled around them, Lily turned back to face him, her eyes filled with determination. "We can't run anymore," she said. "We have to face this together. The only way to get out of this mess is to confront the truth, no matter how much it hurts." Alexander felt a lump form in his throat. He had never been good at facing the truth, especially when it meant losing everything he had worked for. But deep down, he knew Lily was right. If they didn't confront their past, they would be doomed to live in fear forever. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. "We'll fight this together." Lily nodded, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of hope and regret. For the first time in a long while, Alexander felt something stir within him, a sense of purpose, of clarity. Together, they would uncover the truth. And together, they would fight to protect what little they had left. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they were no longer just two people bound by a bet. They were a team, and they would face whatever came next, no matter how dangerous. The days that followed were a blur of fear, anger, and a growing sense of urgency. Alexander and Lily spent hours together, trying to make sense of the web of lies that had entangled their lives. They hired a private investigator to trace the source of the blackmail, but the more they dug, the deeper the rabbit hole became. Lily's past with Ethan was far more complicated than she had let on. She had been involved in shady dealings, ones that connected her to the criminal underworld. But what she hadn't known was how deeply Ethan had become entangled in these dealings, using her naivety to further his own agenda. It was only after the photos surfaced that Lily had realized how much danger they were both in. Alexander couldn't help but feel betrayed. How could Lily, the woman he loved, have kept such a crucial part of her life hidden from him? But as he looked into her eyes, he saw the guilt and shame, and something deep within him shifted. He had his own secrets, after all, ones just as dark and dangerous. Could he really blame her? Lily seemed to read his mind. I know I've hurt you, Alexander. But I never wanted to drag you into this mess. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was doing the right thing. Alexander remained silent, his thoughts churning. He didn't know if he could ever fully forgive her, but he realized he couldn't just walk away. The truth had come out, and there was no turning back. The blackmailer grew bolder as the days passed. They continued to demand money, threatening to release more incriminating evidence unless Alexander complied with their terms. But Alexander was no longer playing by their rules. He had to meet the blackmailer face to face. He had to end this nightmare once and for all. With Lily by his side, Alexander arranged a meeting with the mysterious figure. The location was a dimly lit, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, far from prying eyes. As they arrived, the air was thick with tension, and Alexander's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea what to expect, but he was ready for whatever came next. They entered the warehouse cautiously, and within minutes, they were face to face with the person who had been tormenting them. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't even someone from their past. The person standing before them was someone they both knew all too well. Ethan, Lily whispered, her voice shaking with disbelief. Ethan stood there, smirking, the same arrogant look in his eyes that had once drawn her to him. But now, there was something darker in his gaze, a sense of entitlement, of power. You two are really something, Ethan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I never thought you'd come this far. But here we are. You're both just as dirty as I am, hiding your secrets and hoping no one would ever find out. Why, Ethan? Lily asked, her voice tight with anger. Why are you doing this? You know we both want to move on from the past. Why keep dragging us back into it? Ethan chuckled darkly. You think I'm doing this for revenge? You've got it all wrong. This is business. You see, I've got connections, and I've got power. And I'm not afraid to use it. I figured I could make a few extra bucks off your little scandal. Maybe even ruin your little perfect life, Alexander. Lily's eyes filled with tears. This isn't just about money for you, is it? You're trying to break us, destroy everything we've built. Alexander stepped forward, his voice cold and menacing. You made a big mistake, Ethan. You think you can manipulate us, but you're wrong. We've been through too much. And we're not going to let you tear us apart. Ethan's smirk faltered for just a moment, and in that instant, Alexander lunged forward, knocking the blackmailer's phone from his hand. The room erupted in chaos as they struggled, the tension boiling over. But in the end, it was Alexander who stood victorious, his grip tightening around Ethan's wrist as the man fell to the floor, defeated. You've lost, Alexander said, his voice steady, but filled with venom. You'll never hurt us again. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the dust settled, but the damage was far from over. Ethan was arrested and taken into custody, but the damage to Alexander and Lily's lives had already been done. The blackmail had tarnished their reputations, and the secrets that had been revealed had left deep scars on their relationship. It wasn't easy, and the road to healing was long. But with time, they began to rebuild. Together, they faced the fallout from the scandal, working tirelessly to repair their public images. Alexander poured himself into his work, determined to rebuild the empire he had nearly lost. And Lily, though deeply affected by the events, found solace in her strength and determination to start anew. Their relationship was tested in ways they hadn't anticipated. The scars of the past were not easily erased, and forgiveness did not come quickly. But through it all, they learned to trust each other again, piece by piece, until the walls between them finally began to crumble. Lily, too, took steps to reclaim her independence. She started a new chapter in her life, one where she no longer lived in the shadows of her past mistakes. She sought therapy, took up new passions, and worked to heal the parts of herself that had been broken, and slowly but surely, the bond between them grew stronger. They found comfort in each other's arms, and despite everything, they learned to love again, this time, with a deeper understanding of the complexities of their lives. It had been months since the events that nearly tore them apart. The storm had passed, and though the scars remained, Alexander and Lily had found a sense of peace. One evening, as they sat together in the living room of their newly renovated home, Alexander turned to Lily, his eyes filled with a sense of finality. "I don't regret marrying you, Lily," he said, his voice soft. "Even with everything that's happened, I don't regret it. You've shown me strength I never knew existed." Lily smiled, her eyes warm with affection. "And I don't regret it either. You've taught me so much, Alexander. But most of all, you've shown me that love isn't about perfection. It's about accepting each other's flaws and working through them." With a deep breath, Alexander reached for her hand. "We've been through hell and back. But now, we can start fresh. Together." Lily nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. She had never imagined that her life would take such unexpected turns. But standing here now, with Alexander by her side, she knew one thing for sure: they had overcome the darkness. And together, they could face whatever the future held. The past was behind them, and the future, though uncertain, was theirs to shape. And as they embraced, the weight of everything they had been through lifted, leaving only the promise of a new beginning.
Please subscribe, like, comment and share this video. It means a lot to us. Thank you.